talking about the Miami Heat, they got to be feeling good that they found a taker for Jimmy. I mean, this has been an ugly situation. It's kind of like a little anticlimactic the way that it ended because, like, it's the Jimmy Butler era, and you had hoped that they would be able to, not necessarily make it so ugly on the way out, but you didn't know if you could find a suitor. They found a trade. They got a good first-round draft pick in that trade. I'll spare you on all the other details because there's a bunch of guys that are moving around, but ultimately it leaves the Heat with flexibility moving forward. Y'all saw Jimmy Butler immediately extended in Golden State. This was always about him getting paid. He thought he could only get paid by Phoenix. It turns out Golden State was willing to do that, make that commitment. That's huge for him. Shout out to Jimmy. But it's kind of a shift to a new era for Heat basketball with the emergence of Ware. You have Bam and Tyler. There are some pieces there to work with. So, I'm looking forward to the next chapter. And I can tell you that the Heat coaches and Heat players specifically are feeling very relieved that this is behind them.
Jarod, who would you rather pay in 2 years? Andrew Wiggins or Jimmy Butler? We should probably mention, first of all, in the trade, there are a lot of moving parts, but the main characters, if you will, is Andrew Wiggins, along with PJ Tucker, who just out of nowhere, and a top 10 protected first round pick in 2025 from the Warriors going to the Heat. That could be, it will be protected again in 26 and unprotected in 27 if it continues to roll over, which can get very interesting. And Dennis Schroeder is going to the Jazz after his slavery comment, which is unfortunate. Jarod, who would you rather pay?
After what comment? What did he say?
He compared this whole time period to slavery.
Playing basketball for millions of dollars to be just
like you see.
Now you put me in an awkward position where I'm informing the black guy of this.
When you say things like this, Dennis, like you really, oh man, I can't even look. Dennis is German. He's not even from, like, whatever. It doesn't even matter. Who would I rather pay? Since I don't have an option to pay neither of them. You would of course go with Andrew because he's just younger, right? He's 29, right? So I mean, you're just from a pure like basketball standpoint, bet on the 29-year-old who, for the most part, actually for his entire career, is pretty healthy. Like Andrew Wiggins has really not had, that I can recall, any major injury issues. Knock on wood. The question with Wiggins has always been his motor, and really, it's almost unfair because he was drafted where he was drafted, right? Like if he was drafted 17th, everybody would be like, "Oh shit, Andrew Wiggins is great," like, right? But he wasn't. He was drafted number 1. So that's the problem, is that everybody has that number 1 pick in their brain, and so they expect him to be what a number 1 pick is. But honestly, like, he's been a very productive basketball player his entire career, and I think the Heat, we'll see if #Heat culture can unlock something from him. But I think, again, if your choice is who you're going to pay, I'd rather pay a 29-year-old than a 37, soon to be 38-year-old.
Second best player on the finals team too.
Correct.
Yeah, which, shocking. I think Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry could be interesting, but I don't know how good it's actually going to be. Candace, do you have? I don't know. What was your initial reaction when you saw this come through? Like, were you just kind of like, whatever, or oh, this is interesting?
I feel like anything after the Luka AD trade is going to be like, whatever. Like, whatever. Like, these superstars moving, like, who cares? I feel like I'm numb to it for the rest of this deadline. Anything that I see is not shocking. I don't know. I had, like, a creeping suspicion that maybe Milwaukee's moves earlier today had something to do with a possible Jimmy acquisition or them making a run for him. But that obviously didn't pan out. I don't know about the fit for him in Golden State. I think that it makes sense to have a veteran like him on that team. So I don't mind it from that perspective. As for the Heat, I mean, hey, they got a great pick back. I agree. I think Andrew Wiggins is going to be like perfectly fine in Miami. I think he'll actually be a pretty fun player for them while he's there. Yeah, I was just kind of like neutral about it at this point. I'm more curious about just like the locker room fit with Jimmy and like Draymond and how that's going to pan out. Especially if they do manage to get into the playoffs. If not this year, then next year, since he signed that extension. Yeah, kind of just like whatever. We'll see what happens, but it's a not underwhelming trade, but it was just one of those where I was like, all right, cool. Jimmy finally moved. And that was it.
So the Warriors are 25 and 24. Ugh. They're tied with the Suns and the Kings. And they're in play-in territory, which obviously is very exciting for a lot of Warriors fans, that they might actually stay there because Jimmy Butler teams have been in the play-in a lot recently, which Greg knows. I mean, I don't think this very much like improves their championship stature or whatever the case may be. And I actually think, all things considered, we actually have a comment here, and I was literally about to talk about this. Eddie, thank you. Welcome to the show. Super chats, comments are encouraged and welcomed. Eddie says, CBS graded the Heat trade at D+. We're doing grades already? I mean,
the trade's not finalized. I mean, let's see where all the moving parts go first. At least, can we give them the benefit of that?
Well, that's CBS. That's interesting. So to me, this is what I think. I think with Jimmy Butler, Golden State can win a playoff series. That probably doesn't sound great, but like Golden State just needs more. And you also don't know what Jimmy Butler are you getting. Like, is this a Jimmy Butler who just coasted and is older? Is this a Jimmy Butler who is going to turn it on this time of year, which he's done in the past? Is he going to get hurt because he hasn't played that consistently this year? Like, there's just a lot of question marks. I obviously think he's a great, great player, but he's also older, post Tom Thibodeau, who also like very much post Tom Thibodeau twice, played for him twice, and also has had deep playoff runs in recent years. So I think he makes Golden State better, but like, I wouldn't favor them to beat the Grizzlies, the Thunder, the Rockets, the Nuggets in the playoffs. Like, I just would not. And chances are they're going to face one of those teams in the first round if they do make the playoffs. As it pertains to the Heat, Andrew Wiggins' contract is Andrew Wiggins' contract. However, it's not as bad now because of the way the cap is spiking and has spiked over recent years. And he's a functional player that I think Eric Spoelstra will be able to utilize in some interesting ways. Multi-positional defender, could shoot effective from three, and can be complementary to some of the guys that they have. Could do a little bit with the ball also. So there's that. And I think like he can play with Bam. He can play with Ware. He can play with Jovic. He can play with Tyler. He can play with a lot of these guys. Even Terry Rozier, Greg. He can play with him too, I think. And then we'll see what happens with PJ Tucker. But like, that's just an expiring contract. The pick is actually, I didn't think they would get a first, and they got a first. That's not a bad first. Like, that could be a late lottery pick this year. Yeah, it could be a late lottery pick this year in a good draft. And then you have also the Kyle Anderson piece, which is unclear, and they're trying to move him to shed some salary. So, I mean, I don't know, Greg, like what more could you say about this, in your opinion?
I would, if I were going to draw a parallel to another situation, follow me here. LeBron James leaves the Miami Heat, and what Pat Riley characterized as the most important signing in Heat history followed. I think that was kind of like a backhanded statement, and it was Luol Deng. And Luol Deng came to Miami, and he did a lot of the things that LeBron did, but obviously at a much, like, you know, like not at the same level. You know what I'm saying?
Like a super
but
diet
he
level.
He was a replacement, and I think that Wiggins can be very much a similar replacement that fills a lot of the same holes that Jimmy did, but obviously not to the same degree and to that same, like, he's not a ceiling raiser the way that that Jimmy Butler is, but it'll be a piece that fits. I think the panel is all right that he's going to be just fine in Miami. And the way that the cap is going up, to your point, 30 million is not 55 million, the way that Jimmy Butler would be getting paid. So they made that calculated decision that they weren't going to extend Jimmy Butler, and they're going to have future flexibility because of it.
I think it's going to be interesting to see like what the Heat do now, because it seems like there's going to be a corresponding move. And I do wonder from a playoff sense, because I actually don't think like they might not get out of the play-in situation, but I mean, I don't know. Is this going to rejuvenate some people? Like Bam, I'm sure was tired of the Jimmy Butler shit.
He
like
was.
you could tell it was wearing on him in the interviews and things of that nature. And Jarod, I'll kick this to you. Just like, I mean, they're 25 and 24, I think, after this last win, right, Greg? Against Philadelphia, they won tonight. So, you know, they're on the Pistons' heels, and the Pistons actually lost to the Cavs today, so they're tied. They could potentially avoid the play-in. But I don't know if they're making a real run. But I also don't think it's about that. I think now they can get to this, not rebuild, but retool period. And then after this, we'll probably talk about some other trades. But Jarod, what do you think about the Heat right now?
Yeah, I think, look, their path to the post Jimmy Butler era, you can see sort of a direction now, right? With the Wiggins move. Again, you mentioned just getting Jimmy out of there and out of that locker room. And it's not like, look, I don't want to be out here like Jimmy's a bad dude, because it's not that. Like, you ask any of those guys, they'll be like, we love Jimmy, the whole nine, right? But it's the everyday thing where it's like, yo, Jimmy got suspended. Yo, like they're just tired of this stuff, like, all the time. They're just tired of hearing about it. And the NBA season is a grind, man. Like 82 games, like every other night, like, and to have to answer questions about a dude who's not even playing, like, these guys are sick of that stuff. So from that standpoint alone, it'll be like a huge relief where they come to work every day, right? So that, I don't know what the bump that is. A win, 2 wins, it's something, right? They'll just feel nice coming to work every day. They don't have to worry about answering any questions. And expectations will be lowered, right? Because people are like, oh, well, Andrew Wiggins is no Jimmy Butler, right? So they're not going to be good. So they can kind of just go about their business. They still have arguably the best coach in the league in Spoelstra. And again, I think to Greg's point and to your point, Bryan, he can do some things with Andrew. And look, because Andrew's, he's more than a functioning player, right? Like, he's an above average NBA player, right? Like, they can do some things. And you got some young talent you can do stuff with. You got Bam, you know, and Tyler's playing well this year. Maybe there's another move they're going to make. I think the Heat will be just fine. I can see them easily trying to sneak their way into that 6, right? Because they're tied with the Pistons now, as you mentioned. So they're 7, and the Heat and the Pistons are 6. I don't know who was the tiebreaker or not right now. But if they can somehow manage to sneak into that 6, great. Right now, I don't favor them to beat the Knicks in a series or any of those other teams, but still, like, that, to me, they do that and they get into a playoff series, and with Spoelstra alone, he'll probably get you 2 wins just because he's a freaking tactical genius, right? Like, all right, cool. I think you have a runway where you can see the future is looking bright. So, Bryan, you could put your Heat fan clothes back on again because it's all good, you know?
Actually, I need Candace to put her Knicks hat on real quick. If we do get a Heat Knicks 3-6 in round 1, you're feeling how about this series with this new look team that now has Andrew Wiggins as opposed to a disgruntled Jimmy Butler?
I think probably the same as I would have before. So, like, probably, you know, like the Knicks would win that series. Very likely. Just off the strength of the offense alone. I feel like Jimmy also likes to specifically turn it up against the Knicks. So, like, that's gone. That, like, edge that he always has against them is out. So that helps the Knicks as well. But I do agree. Like, I feel like the Heat can always get a couple of wins in a playoff series, even if they are in this, I don't even want to say stripped down version without Jimmy, but just, you know, post trade, this version of themselves. They could definitely maybe get like a win or 2 on the Knicks. Absolutely. Just because I also have concerns about the Knicks' depth and their defense at times. And, you know, this recent trade this blockbuster trade that the Knicks made for absolutely nobody that would be actually useful to their bench. Concerns me a little bit. Just a little bit. But I think that in a Heat series, I would take the Knicks to win, but I will never count out an Eric Spoelstra-led team from at least getting like 1 or 2 wins on them.
Well, actually, there is an update on that Knicks trade.
You got to caveat any trade the Knicks make with, well, it don't matter. Tibbs don't play him anyway, so what difference does it make? All right. So is Tibbs going to play the dude or not?
We actually got a question. We'll get to that in a second. Hector, you can put that one up, but we'll get to it in a second. But we have the Jericho Sims trade. So this happened as soon as we were getting on. This is not like breaking news. I mean, it literally is, but like, ooh, it's Jericho Sims. He's going to Milwaukee. This is as part of the Kyle Kuzma, Chris Middleton deal. And the Bucks are apparently sending DeLon Wright and cash to the Knicks for Jericho Sims.
Yo.
Let's get Candace's initial reaction.
All right, go ahead, Candace. I'm like, you think is DeLon Wright a Tibbs guy? That's screaming no all over it. But
that's per Shams Charania. So that's happening.
That's giving. He's either going to get waived or maybe taking Shamit's minutes, maybe just because I know he yesterday in the Raptors game, he didn't play at all. So I know he's out of like Tibbs's, or if he did, he played very few minutes. So
that went quick.
Wait, Shamit already out of the rotation?
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So he's out. I cannot imagine a world where DeLon Wright moves the needle for Tibbs.
Well, he plays defense. And if there's anything Tom Thibodeau, likes coming off the bench, I actually think DeLon Wright compliments Deuce McBride pretty well in the event that Cam Payne also gets ostracized from the rotation in the playoffs.
Yo. So wait, the Knicks go what, 6.5 deep right now? Is that the rotation, or they go full 7?
They will at some point only go 6 deep. I know that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, let's get to this comment we got from Frederick Robinson. Thank you for checking in. I'm concerned about what? Oh, this is a WNBA comment. Sorry, wrong show. I could answer that another time though. We did post some WNBA stuff earlier.
The Fever are making moves.
Listen, we talked about that. Should I answer this question anyway? I'm thinking. Now we'll get to it later, maybe, because we got more to talk about. All right. So Heat make their move. The Knicks seemingly make their move. And yes, Jimmy Butler hasn't been like a super big, impactful player because he's barely been there. Greg, I'll toss it to you. How would you feel about, because if the Heat, one, do you think they're going to actually avoid the play-in this year? And two, do you think they would fare well in the series against the Knicks if they do avoid the play-in this year? Because that's likely who they would face in round 1.
Yeah, I do think they will avoid it. I think that there's nowhere to go but up in terms of this team has had a magnet basically attached to them that's kept them at 500. They go a couple games above and then they're back down, and then they go a game under and then they're back up again. It's been this perpetual thing over and over again. I think that the clarity around the locker room, you're already starting to see Bam look more comfortable. Tyler's had a good season. For me, I think that they can get to that 6th spot. Can they beat any of those top teams? I don't necessarily see that unless there's some crazy injury or some sort of situation where the Heat shoot the lights out. But I don't really see that. This is a transition point for the Heat, and they've got some young players that they're playing. I mean, they're obviously starting the rookie now, Khalil Ware. So there's young stuff to look forward to. And usually the Heat are very much about right now. And I think that they'll continue to look at how they can improve the team, but I don't see them using any first-round picks or assets to try to improve this group before the deadline. This is going to be about kind of just making the best of the team that they have, including Wiggins being an integral part. I think he starts from day one.